Welcome to the Sense Making in a Changing World podcast, where we explore the kind of thinking we need to navigate a positive way forward. I'm your host, Morag, permaculture educator and global ambassador, filmmaker, eco-villager, food forester, mother, practivist, and all-round lover of thinking, communicating, and acting regeneratively. For a long time, it's been clear to me that to shift trajectory to a thriving one-planet way of life, we first need to shift our thinking. The way we perceive ourselves in relation to nature, self, and community is the core. So this is true now more than ever, and even the way change is changing. Unprecedented changes are happening all around us at a rapid pace. So how do we make sense of this? To know which way to turn, to know what action to focus on, so our efforts are worthwhile and nourishing and are working towards resilience, regeneration, and reconnection. What better way to make sense than to join together with others in open, generative conversation? In this podcast, I'll share conversations with my friends and colleagues, people who inspire and challenge me in their ways of thinking, connecting and acting. These wonderful people are thinkers, doers, activists, scholars, writers, leaders, farmers, educators, people whose work informs permaculture and spark the imagination of what a post-COVID, climate-resilient, socially just future could look like. Their ideas and projects help us to make sense in this changing world, to compost and digest the ideas, and to nurture the fertile ground for new ideas, connections and actions. Together we'll open up conversations in the world of permaculture design, regenerative thinking, community action, earth repair, eco-literacy and much more. I can't wait to share these conversations with you. Over the last 3 decades of personally making sense of the multiple crises we face, I always return to the practical and positive world of permaculture, with its ethics of earth care, people care and fair share. I've seen firsthand how adaptable and responsive it can be in all contexts, from urban to rural, from refugee camps to suburbs. It helps people make sense of what's happening around them and to learn accessible design tools to shape their habitat positively and to contribute to cultural and ecological regeneration. This is why I've created the Permaculture Educators Program, to help thousands of people to become permaculture teachers everywhere through an interactive online dual certificate of permaculture design and teaching. We sponsor global perma-youth programs, women's self-help groups in the Global South, and teens in refugee camps. So anyway, this podcast is sponsored by the Permaculture Education Institute and our Permaculture Educators Program. If you'd like to find more about permaculture, I've created a 4-part permaculture video series to explain what permaculture is and also how you can make it your livelihood as well as your way of life. We'd love to invite you to join our wonderfully inspiring, friendly and supportive global learning community. So I welcome you to share each of these conversations, and I'd also like to suggest you create a local conversation circle to explore the ideas shared in each show and discuss together how this makes sense in your local community and environment. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I meet and speak with you today, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's my great pleasure to welcome to the show today my dear friend Stephan Harding, or Dr. Stephan Harding from Schumacher College. He's a Gaian ecologist. He has a doctorate of ecology from Oxford University. He's a musician, author, father, co-founder too of the Masters of Holistic Science program at Schumacher College, co-founded with Professor Brian Goodwin. He's also the Research Fellow of Deep Ecology at the college and the Dartington Estate Ecologist. He has 2 books. The first is Animate Earth, Science, Intuition and Gaia. And his recent book is called Gaia Alchemy. He's worked closely with James Lovelock over the decades on the Gaia theory. James is now 101. But back in 1992 is when I first met Stephan, when I was a resident at Schumacher College, beginning with a course that Stephan had co-taught with Fritjof Capra. And with his wife, Julia Ponsonby, who's the author of 2 books, the Gaia cookbooks, and head of food at Schumacher College, we travelled up to Ladakh in the Himalayas to volunteer with Helena Norberg Hodge. And so our friendship goes a long way back. And this is a brief recording of our conversation when I was teaching at Schumacher College last year. It's pre-COVID times, and we were enjoying a walk through the Dartington estate, exploring the work of of James Lovelock and also Stephan's work with the Gaia theory. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And I'm out here in the woodlands behind Gaian Ecology at the moment with Stephan Harding. I met Stephan about, 27 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how would you describe yourself? You're the head ecologist, the leader of the Master of Holistic Science?
Yeah.
What else?
Well, I'm a resident ecologist.
Yep.
As you said, in charge of the MSc in Holistic Science. And I've been here from the very beginning of the college. So I'm one of the founders of the college.
Yeah.
And my background is in science and ecology.
Yep. Should we walk back down this way?
Sure.
A lot of the people who come and do the permaculture courses with me are fascinated about Gaia. And I thought it'd be a really good person, be a perfect person to ask, because that has been your focus for a long time, and particularly because you spent a lot of time with James Lovelock as well, didn't you?
Very lucky to spend time with him.
So what is Gaia? Hang on, I just noticed there's
Oh yeah, we'll go this way.
All right, we'll go this way.
So Gaia has got various levels. So there's the mythological depth psychology level to Gaia, and then there's the scientific level of Gaia. So we can talk about both of those if you like.
Sure, let's...
On the scientific level, Gaia is about all the feedback relationships between all the organisms on the planet, so the microbes, the fungi, the animals, the plants, etc., between themselves and with the rocks, the atmosphere and the water. And the idea in Gaia is that they all interact with each other through feedbacks, and what emerges from all those interactions, it's something completely unexpected. And that is the ability of the planet as one great whole to regulate its surface conditions, such as the temperature. So the idea is that Gaia is, for me anyway, a great living planetary organism, constituted by all the relationships between all the living organisms on the one hand and the atmosphere, rocks and water on the other. So it's like a sort of tight feedback. So
the difference between Gaia and, say, science that's taught in schools is that it's about the interconnectedness between all parts, isn't it? That it's not just the rocks, or it's not just the plants, or it's not just the climate. It's how all of those interconnect. Yeah, and this is Lovelock's Gaia theory. It has revolutionized our understanding of the Earth. So before Lovelock, the idea was that the Earth was just a hunk of rock floating around in space with a little thin smear of life on the surface, which had no influence on the surface temperature or other factors of the surface at all. Life was just like a passive passenger. That's what people thought. But after Lovelock, that's completely been thrown out. And so Lovelock had a pretty interesting background too. He was quite Can you tell us a little bit about him? Well, he's an absolute genius. He's a brilliant inventor of scientific instruments. He's got a great knowledge of science across all kinds of science. And but the main thing about him is that he is phenomenally original and creative. I mean, and very brave. Because when he came up with the idea of Gaia, I mean, even just to call it Gaia. Yeah, that's right, I know. Is incredibly brave. As a scientist too. Yeah, because he was jokingly thinking of calling his theory the Biocybernetic Universal System Tendency. Oh, that would have done really well, wouldn't it? It would have. The bust hypothesis. I see, I didn't even get that, sorry. I missed that one. That was the idea, it was a joke. It was a joke. But anyway, that would have gone down very well with the scientists. Biocybernetic. Cybernetics is the science of feedback and control. Universal System Tendency, pretty good. But he didn't like it, and he thought, no, it's not right. I need some really good name. And his friend, the novelist William Golding, told him to call it Gaia. And Lovelock never heard of Gaia. No, right. Now this brings us to the mythological dimension. Now Gaia is the ancient Greek divinity of the earth. Now she's even more primordial than a goddess, because in the ancient myth from Hesiod, which Hesiod wrote down about 600 BC, there was, first of all, before anything existed, there was this chaos, vast and dark. And out of this chaos, this chaos wanted to become something. It felt a bit lonely. So it formed itself into the earth. And that was the first thing that came out of primordial chaos, was Gaia, fully formed. Oh, wow. Yeah, and so... I don't think I've heard this story before. Yeah, you see, it's very deep. And so Golding said to Lovelock, no, you don't call it the Biocybernetic Universal System Tendency. Call it Gaia. This huge sacred name came out of Golding's mouth. And Lovelock, to his credit, eventually understood it. To begin with, Lovelock thought Golding had said Jaya,
these big swirling eddies.
Yeah.
And so Lovelock said, no, not Gaia. Can't call it Gaia theory. And I like to think in my crazy poetic way that the whole biosphere that had been waiting for 2,000 years for Gaia to come back into the Western culture gave up and thought, oh, God. But Golding said, no, not Gaia, Gaia. Boom. And so the whole thing started again. And this time Lovelock heard it.
Yeah, right.
And to his credit, he really liked the name. It resonated with him.
Yeah.
I mean, for a scientist to adopt such a deeply mythological, poetic name for his theory is phenomenal.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. So we got Gaia back into our culture through science.
And so how did people respond to it in those early days?
Well, the New Age and the hippies loved it, of course.
Yeah.
And that was right. But the scientists hated it because Gaia for them suggested that something about the Earth knew what the temperature should be, or it knew what the amount of phosphorus should be. In other words, it was what we call in science a teleological, implying that there's purpose in nature.
Yeah, right.
And that is not allowed in science.
No.
Big taboo.
Yep.
I mean, I was brought up in science. The last thing you're allowed to say is that there is purpose. It's all meaningless, purposeful, purposeless. It's one great dead machine. The whole cosmos is one great dead machine.
To be observed and
and to be manipulated and used for our purposes. So, Gaia smacked of teleology, of purposefulness in nature. So they hated it, and they gave it a really bad time.
So how did he manage to get it heard?
Well, he's only got it heard a certain amount. Hello, this is my dog friend. Excuse me. It's all right. So, well, what he did was to make a mathematical model. He knew he had to make a mathematical model to get around this problem. And so he created a model called Daisy World.
Daisy World, right.
Which is actually, he describes as his finest invention. He's created many brilliant scientific instruments. And so that showed that in principle you could get Gaian self-regulation emerging from selfish individuals and selfish organisms that interact with each other but also affect the climate at the same time.
Yeah.
And no one had ever made a model that put physics and biology together.
Yeah, right.
And it was amazing how you get emerging. It's amazing how in a Daisy World you get self-regulation emerging without building it into the equations. It just emerges from all the interactions.
Yeah. And so you worked with him there. Was that part of what you were doing?
I did that for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Until I got really tired of sitting in front of computers.
Right. I can imagine.
But Gaia theory has transformed our understanding of the Earth, and it's become rebranded in science.
Yeah.
So it's now called Earth System Science.
Okay.
Earth System Science.
So what's happening now with climate change, and how is Gaia theory informing what's going on in the present day?
Yeah, well now the very best climate modelers have been influenced by Lovelock very heavily. Some of them here in Exeter in England.
Yeah, right.
Tim Lenton and Richard Betts, Peter Cott, some of the really top people.
Yeah.
And they're making new supercomputer models of the climate based on Gaia theory in which the organisms interact with the climate.
Yeah,
and of course it makes things infinitely more complex. But that's one thing that's happening. Another thing that's happening on a more theoretical level is that people are beginning to realize that there's another level of natural selection which operates at the level of Gaian feedbacks.
Yeah, right.
There's selection amongst Gaian feedbacks. So I know this sounds a bit technical, but it's actually breaking open our understanding of evolution and how it works. And we're beginning to realize that evolution can also happen at the level of planetary feedbacks. So I think it's a very exciting time when the paradigm is starting to shift, all because of Lovelock's work.
Yeah. And so Lovelock is now turning 100.
100 this year.
Wow. Whenabouts?
July the 23rd, I think.
And you're going to his birthday party here?
In Blenheim Palace. And he's as sharp as a button. He's written a new book.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
What's it called?
I can't remember now, actually. But it's only just been, it hasn't been published yet.
And so how does he see what's happened with Gaia since it started? Has he shifted his perception on anything? Has he had change of thinking about it, or has it just kept on evolving?
I think he's kept on evolving. And I think he's quite happy that it's been more or less accepted in science. At least certain aspects of it have been accepted. And I think he's very happy that gradually even evolutionary theory is realizing that there's a Gaian dimension that has been ignored in natural selection.
And so is Gaia being now taught in schools yet, do you think?
Not enough.
No, because, I think still too much of the old science is
too
being
much of
taught
the
in
old
schools.
science. You see, for me, Gaia is both mythological and scientific. What I try to do in my work...
What was your book?
My
What
book's
does
called
that-
Animate Earth.
Yep.
Animate Earth. So I'm trying to put together the science, but in a poetic way. So we can use the science to awaken our poetic relationship with nature. Because unless we have a poetic relationship, a love relationship with nature, we're not going to do anything about it, about the crisis.
No, that's
Our
absolutely
understanding
right.
will be too theoretical.
Yep.
I think I'm a scientist, so I need the science,
Yep.
but I want to use it to help myself fall in love with nature much more.
Well,
that was what
you
my
to
book was
fall
about.
in love with nature, but everyone to fall in love with nature. I think
Everyone.
you're absolutely right.
Everyone.
Until we care,
Yeah.
until we do love, we're not going to have that.
No,
are we?
we have to fall in love with nature.
Yeah.
And because we're a scientific culture, I think we can use the science of Gaia particularly, the science of, microbes, earthworms, fungi, forests, clouds, mountains, rocks.
Yeah.
All of that as one integrated living being, told mythologically with the science.
Yeah.
I think that can help us fall in love with nature. And that's what I've been doing at Schumacher College
yeah.
for 27 years.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
I tell some of the science as a fairy story.
Oh, wow.
Like love affairs between
Yeah.
carbon princes and calcium princess, and it works.
Wow.
People, it really does
Should
work.
hear that again. I remember hearing that 27 years ago, and I remember you had your was that a little guitar, or ukulele, or something?
Yes, a quattro from Venezuela.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you sung the Gaian story
Singing.
too.
Singing. So it's a mixture of for me, it's integrating
Yeah.
Carl Jung's 4 functions: thinking, feeling, sensing, intuition. Put them all together, and then in the middle is Gaia. When we integrate our psyches in that way, then we can really fall in love with this amazing cosmos of
Yeah.
ours, and then we'll spontaneously act to save it.
Yep. I think that's a beautiful thing. And you're now writing another book based on that.
I'm writing another book.
Yeah.
Yes, this time I'm trying to put together alchemy and Gaia. So I'm calling it Gaia Alchemy,
Wow.
but it's very difficult.
Yes, I can
I'm not sure
imagine.
if I'll manage to do it.
Oh, well, I hope you do. I really hope you do. Now, there's also a film based on your work.
There is.
as
There's a
well.
film called Animate Earth,
Yeah.
and there's an app which you know about, the Deep Time Walk app.
Yeah. So, what I might do underneath is put links to all of these
Please,
things too,
could you?
so people can see. Yeah,
That would be great.
Yeah.
And of course, Morag, it was so good that you were one of our first students at the college.
Right.
And look what you've done as a result. It's fantastic.
It's kind of, let's turn around so we can see the college behind us. Here we
Right.
go. There we are.
Yeah.
It's part of it there. I mean, it did. It transformed my life. The thinking that I don't know, the experience. It wasn't just the thinking; it was the whole experience. It was it was a learning community. The way that what we ate and how we shared, and the knowledge and the people that came here too. Like there was you, there was Fritjof Capra, there was Vandana Shiva, and Helen Novohoja, and Arnie Ness. I mean, all of those different things together. Pour those in this mix of this beautiful learning community into young people, and you create. I think incredible opportunities for people to head out into their life and do incredible things.
And people who've been here, like you, have gone on to do incredible things like you've done all over the planet. So although it's a small place, I see it's a centre of deep Gaian learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as if there's some deep energy coming out of the earth which inspires us all very deeply.
And draws us back. Like, I mean, this is, I don't know how many times I've been back. And I wish I'd been back more, but this is, as I came around the corner just a week ago and I saw it and I felt it. I was like, oh, I'm home. There's there's a few points around that I feel that deep sense of connection. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah, you know that saying in Latin, alma mater, the mother of your soul. This really, for me, is also the mother of my soul, this college, for the reasons you've said. It's an incredibly important place.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
a pleasure.
Sharing. Yeah.
It's lovely. Thank
Lovely
you.
to see you
Morag.
again.
And you too, Morag. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks for tuning in to the Sense Making in a Changing World podcast today. It's been a real pleasure to have your company. I invite you to subscribe and receive notification of each new weekly episode with more wonderful stories, ideas, inspiration, and common sense for living and working regeneratively. And call positive permaculture thinking and design into action in this changing world. I'm including a transcript below and a link also to my 4-part permaculture series, really looking at what is permaculture and how to make it your livelihood too. So join me again in the next episode where we talk with another fascinating guest. I look forward to seeing you there.